Hello, 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 and welcome to yet another episode of the one and only and not so lonely Crush It with Creativity podcast with your host, Joy Ghosh. What is that we crush in this podcast? Well, anything that poses itself as an obstacle on your path to step into your field of favor gets crushed in this Crush It with Creativity podcast. So brace yourself for an exciting episode and keep crushing it with your creativity. This is Joy Ghosh.
Hello, my friends. This is Joy Ghosh, and I welcome you to episode 6 of the Crush It with Creativity podcast. And the title of this episode is Key Success Factor of Innovation, Self-Competency Before Team Efficiency. So Winston Churchill once said, "To each there comes in their lifetime when they are figuratively tapped in the shoulder and offered the chance to do a very special thing, unique to them and fitted to their talents. What a tragedy if that moment finds them unprepared or unqualified for that which could have been their finest hour." So, my friend, in this episode, consider my message as that figurative tap on your shoulder, offering you that opportunity to prepare yourself for that first or that 100th innovation that the world has never seen yet from you. Your current level of self-competency to innovate or invent a product or service that makes an impact at the mass scale that you desire may not be sufficient quite yet. And the solution? Innovate yourself. If you are working as a team, engage with a team where each person is innovating themselves to collaborate and make that massive impact and generate profits. In previous episodes, I have explained how innovation and invention can occur in any area of expertise, any core competency, even if common beliefs tend to restrict invention and innovation to the technical branches of study and practice. Trained as an engineer myself, who served some amazing clients across multiple industries in 4 continents for 30 years, I will be the first to admit that anyone can invent, anyone can innovate, as long as they have the inclination to look beyond the ordinary, not just think outside the box, but build the box for others to think outside of. And here's a statement that you may perhaps want to make a note of and stick it somewhere that you can look at every day as you progress with your innervation and innovation journey. Quote, "Whatever product or service you will invent and innovate in your career as an innovator will be an exact replica of who you are as a person or team and your current level of innovation that you have been able to accomplish." Close quote. So, my friend, as within, so without. Every product or service has a character of its own. It has a benefit stack, and it has a stack of things that it does not do. Every product or service is an expression of yourself on how you, through your innovation, desires to make an impact in your target market. The world we build is how we desire to perceive it, to see it. So what is the world that you desire to see once your innovation hits your target market? Whether you are a solo and independent inventor or you work in a team, the rules of innervation to arrive at a common innovation objective are the same. You must build a character for your product or service that will portray your collective character, your collective vision of how you desire the world of your target market to look like when they have your innovation commercially available in their lives. I remember many years ago, I was chartered to take on a dual role of a project manager and a solution architect on a 2-year-long major software development and implementation project for a premier client of my employer at that time. To add to the complexity, the project required a global implementation of the software for all the international operations of my client. We had to replace legacy systems that were no longer scaling to support the rapid business growth of my client. If you can imagine the complexity of inefficient business processes, lack of accountability, lack of transparency, lack of data integrity, disparate siloed systems, it is quite a complex task to take on. Now add that global flavor to all of that, and the complexity multiplies to as many countries where my client had expanded their operations. Within the first week into the project, with a skeleton team with me, I realized that it would be quite foolish to start development and implementation of any software unless we first brought in innovation of the business processes in place, not only locally, but internationally as well. The buzzword in those days for such a task was business process re-engineering. That's quite a mouthful. A fancy term for a rather complicated task. And traditional consulting protocols in those days mandated that we analyze current business processes first, identify gaps in those business processes to an ideal state process, and then work to eliminate those gaps through process changes and technology. Now, I realize that such a process of current state business process mapping, doing the gap analysis, and then trying to implement something through technology or process changes to eliminate those gaps would take months to complete, while the client's business continued to quote unquote bleed with inefficient practices, higher overheads due to manual interventions and data integrity issues that were growing by the day. So I chose to take an entirely different and innovative approach on how to manage this project, how to manage the deliverables, how the team of consultants and the business analysts of the client, how they worked together to come up with a better solution. So instead of wasting time analyzing existing business processes, which I knew were inefficient to start with, and getting the client's analysts to agree on what is right and what is not due to disagreements on what the process really was, I decided to ignore the established consulting protocol. I wasn't very popular with my boss at that time when I did that, but I decided to ignore the established consulting protocol as the project manager and the solution architect of that project. So instead of going through an elaborate and contentious current state process mapping for months, followed by more months in gap analysis and more contentions, I simply cut out all of that and presented what the future state business processes should look like based on leading practices in the industry. It was prescriptive in the beginning, but it brought cross-functional teams together with checks and balances at every step, with clear handoffs between the functional teams, eliminating a lot of waste to come up with a set of lean business processes. I literally set up line managers in each functional area in the future state process flows and asked each of them to use their expertise to come up with what they would like their processes to be in the future. Each one of those line managers had to work with their team, consult with their team, and they had to innovate their respective area, and each one needed to clearly articulate what they would ideally need from the previous functional team in the business process flow in order to perform at their highest efficiency. So I established what I was referring to in those days called cascading innovation. In other words, one team innovates based on what the next team in the process flow wants as input from the first team. Now the second team innovates based on what they have to produce for the third team in the process flow, and so on and so forth. So we brought in this concept of a consumer and a provider. In order for the consumer to operate at their highest efficiency, the producer or the provider had to provide to the consumer something that was of high value, of high quality, of high accuracy, so that the process can flow without any waste between these handoffs. Empowered with the freedom to innovate their respective field of impact and clearly articulating what they expected from the previous functional area in order to work efficiently and produce high quality output for their next functional area to consume, each team developed high excitement and energy to deliver their very best. I had instructed them to not worry about the technology. They had to innovate the most efficient, futuristic, cross-functional business processes first. So the team in the United States, where the corporate headquarters are located, took the lead in this effort. And once they were done, these innovated business processes were distributed to each international team to use as a template to add their own local nuances to the core business processes. At the end, we had a globally applicable, future state, highly optimized, highly efficient set of business processes that also factored in regional variations whenever it was needed. Each team innovated their own area, demanded what they ideally wanted to consume from the previous team in the process flow, and agreed to provide exactly what the next team in the flow needed in order for them to perform at their peak efficiency. And once the future state business processes were set up at a global scale, along with the international business processes, it paved the way for a significantly smooth software implementation and legacy system transition into the new system that supported the global business of my client. A project that was supposed to take 2 years was completed and commissioned for live operations in 18 months, saving my client a ton of money at the end as they shifted their business to the new business processes and technology. Moreover, since each team was empowered with innovation, user acceptance testing and training had a fast turnaround because each functional area actually owned their piece right from the start. And thanks to the executive management of that project, they resonated with my argument to promote open innovation in every functional area in their business ecosystem. The executive management supported my initiative to start innovation bottom up instead of the traditional process of top down. Each functional area developed a pride of ownership, and they collaborated with other teams like never before to understand each other's needs in an ideal state scenario so that each one of them could build a world for their company and their customers that each one of them would be proud of. They literally redefined the character of their company through these innovative and highly efficient business processes. And once they were done, my technical team engaged to make the technology fit into the business processes. In a sense, the innovative business processes dictated what the technology needed to do, as opposed to the technology dictating what the process needs to do. In my opinion, technology is a facilitator, not a dictator of how a business should be run. The point I am making in this example from my career is if you're keen on innovation, focus on innervation. Focus on elevating your level of competency so that you can participate and keep pace with the momentum of innovation with the rest of the team that is also innovating. Any team, as you know, is as fast as the slowest member in the team. So just make sure that slowest one is not yourself. Now that would be embarrassing and could put your position in the team at risk. Remember, team is an acronym for together, everyone achieves more. But that everyone should be at par from an innervation level perspective so that togetherness of achieving more really comes into reality. Innovate yourself at the same pace as the team you play with, keeping the common objectives in the forefront. Consider the common objectives of whatever you will invent or innovate as an independent inventor or an innovation team to be the gold standard that is demanding you to qualify yourself to be worthy enough to step up to the plate and claim your participation in that masterpiece. If you're not qualified yet, well, go and innovate some more until you reach a point when you do get to win your stripes. I trust this has added value so that you would understand how, in order to play in a team that is operating at peak efficiency, everybody in the team must focus on self-competency. And you can do that through innovation. All right, that's all I got for this episode. I appreciate you listening. Innovate, and you will absolutely innovate. Until the next time, get back on some me time again and contemplate on how you can innovate yourself with newer skills, newer competencies, so that you can play a bigger, better, more efficient role when you are working in a team that is bent on innovation of some common objectives. If you know anyone who could benefit from this information, help me make an impact in their lives by sharing with your network. And as I say, sharing is caring, more so when what you share can benefit others. So I appreciate you taking your time to listen to this podcast. I trust this has added value, and I will see you soon in the next one. Goodbye for now.
Ladies and gentlemen, this brings us to the end of this episode in the Crush It with Creativity podcast. We trust you enjoyed it just like Joy did, pouring his heart out to you. Should you feel this episode added value to you, We would love for you to share this episode with your friends and family in your social media networks so that we can impact other lives with our message. Ready to take on a Crush It with Creativity challenge for yourself and really crush whatever poses an obstacle for you stepping into your field of favor? Visit us at www.uniqueimpactability.com for details on the next challenge coming up and sign up for more information. Until the next episode, take care and keep crushing it with your creativity.